Welcome to the day after Saturday. I'm your co-host Jackson Juzang.
And I'm your other co-host, Krish Gupta.
We're starting off season 3 with the best way possible. We have our first Haverford professor in the political science department who's concentrated on terrorism studies, Mr. Barak Mendelsohn. We really appreciate you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, awesome.
Of course.
All right.
And as we say at this podcast, the best place to start is always the beginning. So can you try, I know this is broad, but can you try to sum up your journey to Haverford, how you found Haverford, and how all of your experiences have shaped the way you teach and research terrorism? It's a lot.
Yeah, that's an easy first question.
We got to warm it up somehow.
I was born and raised in Israel, and actually wanted to be a journalist when I was a kid. But over time I got a sense that the stuff that interests me is politics, and then it was just a question of how I'm going to be handling these kind of things. I did some intelligence during my military service, and afterwards I had to contemplate what I'm going to do next. So, I was thinking between the different forces of darkness, foreign ministry, or academia. And somehow it ended up as academia. And my professors in Israel told me, if you want to get a job in Israel, you got to get your PhD abroad. I said, okay. I ended up going to Cornell. And during my second year in Cornell, second week of the semester, 9/11 happened.
Oh, wow.
And
Oh, my goodness.
Suddenly, people actually cared about what I have to say. They cared about terrorism, which they did not care before. They cared about the Middle East, which they did not care before. So suddenly I found myself with job prospects. And I still ended up at the end of my studies going back to Israel, but pretty quickly I figured that Israel changed significantly since I left Israel, and I changed significantly since I came to the US. And so I spent a year in Israel and escaped back to the United States, in part because I had a girlfriend that was American and not Jewish, and I didn't think that Israel is a good place for us to be. So we ended up applying for jobs in the U.S. And here was that job from Haverford, and I had a feeling I'm going to get it. I never heard about Haverford before, but I had a feeling that this might work out. And so in really weird trajectory, I found myself, instead of actually being a professor in Israel, suddenly teaching in a Quaker school about security.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah. Well, what was that like that transition, having not known about Haverford at all?
It was hard because some of the resistance is principled, but so much of the resistance is just facade, is just virtue signaling, and I hate that kind of stuff. I can handle with serious arguments, but not with the facade. And there are lots of people that think that that you can't study security in a Quaker school, and I think this is pretty ridiculous. If you wanna, first, this is the world outside. We gotta prepare the students for the world, what's going on in the
Agreed.
world outside. But I think that also, if you actually wanna pursue peace, you gotta understand how conflict works. It seems to me really central, and it was pretty upsetting that I still need to justify why it's important that we have people here that focus on security. It's even worse when it comes to the issue of terrorism, where there is an instinct to blame people that engage in terrorism studies as trying to reproduce terrorism. In reality, what we do is actually most of the time we're debunking stupid myth about terrorism. So it's not easy to do that in a place like Haverford, where, I mean, all the stuff that I tell you about what actually happens versus, you know, how
What people's
people portray
perceptions,
that.
yeah.
And people's perception seems to be stronger, or at least having a stronger pull than what
Yeah.
we actually do in our field or what we actually do in the classroom.
Well,
It is what it is.
yeah, I think ironically with Haverford, and you mentioned security so much, and it's like a place that we're one of the only college campuses without police.
Or cameras.
Or cameras, right? And we're kind of like living on just a strict trust system that works for every student and administrator to like trust policy around Haverford rather than like stricter guidelines that like prohibit any instance period via security and policing and all that stuff. So it's interesting that you're able to teach and I guess hopefully destigmatize a lot of the issues around terrorism and what people believe it is and is not.
In order to actually hear these things and get a better understanding, you gotta have an open mind. I'm not sure that the average student today actually has an open mind to new ideas.
Yeah. Well, obviously, most of your work has been done through terrorism studies, and you've written a book combating jihadism and the Al Qaeda franchise. And we're kind of in this discussion right now, but what misconceptions do you still see dominating policy and rhetorical conversations today around terrorism studies?
Well, first you see the attempt to expand what constitutes terrorism. And try to expand that not based on analytical reasons, but based on political needs. And indeed, we know that policymakers have the inclination to use the tools that they have and retool them for their purposes. And the war on terrorism gave people lots of tools. And so the stigma that comes with terrorism also means that a lot of regimes are going to be using the label of terrorism to fend off legitimate criticism or nonviolent acts of resistance. And so that's a big problem that requires people that study terrorism not to speak just about what terrorism is. And it is really hard to really identify what terrorism is and have a clear definition. Nobody managed to do that so far. But it's pretty easy to see when people are expanding that definition to justify whatever they want to do, or use the label of terrorism in order to
just legitimize
sort of
anything.
Stop any kind of discussion. So these are big issues. Another issue, I'll give you an example. I gave a talk at Chapel Hill over a decade ago, probably something like 15 years, and I discussed the differences between Al Qaeda and the Islamic State. So first, this is one thing that we always find ourselves having to do. People tend to think that all jihadis are the same, or all radical Muslims are the same, when there are actually so many splits and so many internal fighting that if we want to really understand what's going on, we got to be a lot more nuanced and understand the differences that these groups have. And I was giving that talk there, and I had about 200 people in the audience, including many that are not from the community. And at the end, an old man asked a question about the role of immigration, Muslim immigration to the United States, and tried to frame that as an effort to overthrow the US government, to change the whole country. Right? And this is something that, if I heard that from a Harvard student in class, I think I probably would have been more upset.
Yeah, I would not expect that.
But when I was there, I thought actually this is an opportunity for me to try to give some information on how to think about this. So I started by, how many people are we thinking about in terms of migrants? How many people live in the United States? How much do you need to actually change the nature of a country? Really to take those big slogans of, immigration equals increasing terrorism, and try to break that down to the details so that people will have a better sense
Yeah.
and won't buy into those easy slogans that are just so wrong on so many levels.
Right. And you also wrote that you read an article. I got the luxury to check it out last night. Paper Tiger. What do you think? Like, again, I think that's a good segue into thinking about, I guess, what a perfect example is more misconceptions about what students have about terrorism in the United States. What do you think has been common among your, I guess, Haverford students? Maybe the first time they meet you and enter a class with you.
Oh, I'm not sure that I know what goes in their head when they come to their first class with me. Many times students that come to Haverford don't know much about international politics or about security studies or what terrorism studies even involve. So the first class is sort of a gamble. So most people, the first class with me will be the intro to international politics. And this will probably be the first time that they're actually exposed to the idea that there is a theory behind international relations, rather than this is just what's going on in the news.
Right.
And I think that this is something that is very surprising to lots of people, or to understand that terrorism studies is based on theories. Again, this is not just a collection of stories.
It's a real world. Yeah.
Right. It's a lot more rigorous than that. So I think that students don't really know what they're getting into. And my job is then to, make it exciting enough that they will decide this is something that I want to continue and study, that I want to learn more about.
Yeah.
Makes sense. And since 2001, I'm curious, have students become more aware of terrorism studies, or is it still kind of people are starting from ground zero?
The ups and downs. Well, first, people begin with no knowledge. I gotta say that the level of background knowledge or knowledge of the world from Harvard students, and I'm sure if this is at Harvard students also elsewhere, is pretty appalling. It's very, very disappointing how little knowledge of the world outside the United States students here actually have.
Yeah, totally agree. And I guess this kind of segues nicely into also this is also about the people on campus, but with the recent Middle Eastern conflicts and things like that, there's a lot more discourse on campus about international issues. So I was just curious, what is a good balance between free speech and an inclusive environment for all students?
I don't like the idea that people are trying to portray the anti-Semitism problem at Haverford as a problem of free speech. I see conduct. I think it's very comfortable for people to say, no, this is about free speech. I see conduct. When students are afraid to say that they are Jewish, this is a matter of conduct. This is not a matter of free speech. When people are afraid to go to a Shabbat dinner at the Chabad house. If they go, they don't tell their friends. This is all serious stuff. When students are ripping posters for events of Chabad or Club High, this is not a matter of speech. This is a matter of conduct. Right? This is even before we get to the whole idea of, all of you came here knowing that there is an honor code. Don't you understand that this is a violation of the honor code? That you have double standards, that Any other kind of violation, a person that will do that will already face consequences. But when it comes to the Jews on campus, you
Just doesn't
have different kind of rule. I mean, the fact that people feel that they can just throw things like, all Zionists should be killed, or all Zionist political science students should be killed. This is not just a matter of freedom of speech. And we cannot understand even, so when you get that this is that, so you can't really see also the statements that are made just in the context of speech.
Right.
Because now you got to link them to also the behavioral aspects.
Right.
And so I normally I lean towards more freedom of speech. But I think that the way that people try to analyze the region here, because there's so few people that actually understand the region, have a clue. Lots of people have very strong positions, but
Not exactly.
extremely little knowledge,
Right.
whether it's students or faculty. And you just see that kind of mode of analysis that is starting from that really shallow division of oppressed and oppressor. And you understand that the whole discourse is a waste of time because it's just a wrong discourse. When we can easily, and if you go to the political science department, all of the professors there will be able to frame the conflict in the Middle East through the tools that we
Through their
have
lens,
in political science in order to actually understand what is going on and not make all those general statements that are very convenient and so bad academically.
Right.
When I see these kind of simplistic theories, and I see that some of the people that actually promote them are not students, but people that should definitely know better, I'm embarrassed for the school. I'm embarrassed for myself because people are devaluing, my job.
Right. Well, and I think a big part of that, and I totally hear you and agree with you on the idea of like people pushing simplistic narratives without any second thought of like how that may distort other people's perspectives and the impact on other people who may know nothing and people are passing on it like they do know something. I will say that like I'm interested in this fact, and I've talked to a few people. I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and that's where the synagogue shooting was in 2018. That was my freshman year of high school. My high school is right around the street from it, and something I ended up talking to in the future about my fellow Jewish friends around the Squirrel Hill area. We've had many discussions just on how like the historical aspects of the Middle East conflict and then the religious aspects of the Middle East conflict are almost inseparable when you're thinking about both sides of the narrative. And I want to ask you, I guess, what roles do you really see within like the entirety of the historical context and religious context of both sides? And then I think just following that, how do you, or I guess I could just start with that. I think that's very valuable.
So I would say first, we should not attach the roots of anti-Semitism to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, simply because the roots of anti-Semitism go way farther than any kind of conflict in the Middle East. Another important caveat is that we need to understand the changing nature of identity. So when you speak today about what it means to be Jewish, I think it's going to be important to move away from seeing Judaism only as a religion. And I'm an atheist. I don't believe in God. I'm also very Jewish. And so I think that viewing the Israeli-Palestinian conflict only through the lens of religion is reductionist. Right? Not all Palestinians are Hamas. In fact, not all Palestinians are necessarily conservative Muslims. If you go to Ramallah and the West Bank, you will see very different kind of city life. Same when it goes to Judaism. You go in Israel, if you will go to Tel Aviv, what makes one an Israeli Jew doesn't have to be religion. For me, it's primarily actually the language, right? The culture, the music is one of the few things that I still feel really strongly connected. Religion was never really in my Jew card, and so I think it's important to understand those other elements. And so it's also, if you try to portray things as religious conflicts, you play into the narratives that allow for genocidal behavior, because framed as a religious conflicts usually cannot be resolved through compromise. Right. If there is one truth and only one, and both sides have their own one truth, then this is not going to work, and therefore you will look at endless kind of conflict. But in my view, religion doesn't have a force of its own. Religion doesn't have agency. It's about people that interpret religion. So when I look at Islam, you have many Islams, and I know of the worst people that are Muslim with the worst interpretation or most radical interpretation of Islam, and I know the best people that are Muslims and have a very different, radically different understanding of what Islam actually means. And the same goes for Judaism. Especially in the monotheist religions, you can find whatever you want in the textbooks. Well, textbooks, in the holy books. Right. You can find the violent, you can find the peaceful. So it's about how people actually interpret that. And I want to bring back that agency to people, because it's people that can. And so there is a difference if you try to promote a Jewish view that focuses on the sanctity of the land, versus if you try to promote a Jewish view that focuses on the sanctity of life. Leads to very different kinds of behavior.
Right. No.
So religion is definitely in the background, but the conflict is primarily an ethno-nationalist conflict. Sadly, the religious element is only leading to further escalation. One of the reasons why we see that this conflict is so violent, definitely religion makes a significant contribution to that. Because in the religious text, you can also find those elements that will allow you to feel legitimate to dehumanize the other side.
Right.
And again, I said that you will find all those holy texts.
Right.
You will always, if you want, you will be able to find the interpretations that you need.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting insight that in religious wars, both sides have one truth, so it's kind of impossible to come up with a compromise. That's a really good point. And just to sort of bring it back to campus discourse, I was curious about your reaction to like President Wendy's congressional testimony and all that. Like if you watched that and the
well, yeah, of course I watched that.
Yeah,
I mean that was the first time that my name was mentioned in a congressional hearing.
I don't know whether to say congratulations or not.
No, I did anticipate that one day my name will be there, but I thought that's going to be because of my work, and as I'm presenting my work in a congressional hearing, that it's not going to be anything that relates to anti-Semitism. Right. In fact, until October 7, Judaism was so far off my mind. I was made by people on this campus into a Jew.
Right.
I was not before October 7. People on this campus made me a Jew. And when I saw that congressional hearing, it was sad. I think that people saw Haverford College trying to be as evasive as possible. And the kind of jargon and haverspeak that works here does not work in the real world. And so we looked really bad, even not being able to actually understand how to communicate with people that are not in the ivory tower. But I thought that that was a very important step towards bringing about change at Haverford. Because Haverford is not going to change itself unless it experience pressure.
Right.
And so I think that it's sad that we're in this position. I mean, just think how bad things need to be for Congress to pay attention to a tiny place like Haverford that doesn't even have that much money.
It's pretty much out of money. Yeah.
And so
Maybe-
to be able to get on Congress's radar, I mean, we were surprised
Yeah.
that happened. But we also saw that as an opportunity. And so I spoke with congressional staffers in an effort to make sure that this is not going to be a circus, because yes, we do have our doubts about the intentions behind those hearings, or at least the position of some congressmen in those hearings. And I saw that actually providing information allowed Congress people to ask more specific questions, allowed them to actually get a better sense of what's going on. Now, some of my conversations were pointless. You staffers can prepare stuff, but then the congressman decides what they're going to say. And I mean, they can be completely off. And then you say, well, I wasted time trying to brief and give people a sense of what's going on campus. But this is sort of a bet that you got to make. And so I think that overall, from my perspective, even though I think that the performance of the president was very disappointing, it actually really exposed how bad things are, and hopefully will push us in the right direction so that we will be able to be the place that we were supposed to be. Because when you asked earlier about difference from 2001 and food, I've been at Haverford now for 18 years. And 18 years, your generation is different than the generation that I started teaching.
Certainly.
Right?
Sure.
It's not that far,
Yeah.
but there is a huge difference. For example, the quality of discussion
Yeah.
plummeted. It's just the quality of discussion in many places on campus is just so low, and I completely understand, because I found myself in class saying, wait a second, or thinking, I spent so much time trying to think about every sentence I'm going to say before saying it. Everything got so slow, but I think, and I'm going to say it, but many students feel like, it's not worth it. Because anything that you can say, there is a sense that somebody's going to try their moral virtue signaling or try to build their PC credentials over your back. You're not allowed to make any mistake. You cannot say any wrong word. Nobody will give you the benefit of the doubt. Right? In a place that is priding itself on the honor code. And yet we don't give the benefit of the doubt for these kind. And so students that is having to think about what they're going to say will ultimately say, no, I'm not. Why would I waste my energy and take risks of being ostracized when I can just be quiet? And so the result is the quality of discussion is just so, went so low.
So politically correct.
Completely compared to. So I try to fight with that in part by saying, I don't care about what's your personal position. I need you to be able to actually say all sides of an argument.
Mm-hmm. Right.
This is not about beliefs. This is about making an argument. So I try to remove people from personal feelings and maybe try to foster an environment in the classroom that people will feel that it is okay to say what's on their mind. It's also okay to laugh at times. In fact, part of my ridiculous task I say fuck 3 times in my classroom. Every time I count with my fingers, and the point is to normalize saying fuck in the classroom, because fuck is to emphasize something.
You just hit
Right.
3. You just
Yeah,
you
perfect.
hit 3 for the episode. That was
Yeah,
you
yeah.
did it one swing of the bat. No, I think one of the bigger reasons I kind of lobbied to have you on the show was that we can have this type of discussion, and I'm not going to act like I'm the most knowledgeable person historically or politically with the conflict. And it would be, my biggest goal here was to honestly have dialogue and like kind of, again, like I said before, destigmatize what's going on with students in crafting, no merit to their arguments and kind of just spewing out the first thing that's on their minds, regardless of the side that may be on. Like, the goal is so that you can have open discourse with people.
I mean, just to give you a sense of how ridiculous my predicament is, in Israel, I'm considered extreme left. Right? Here, exactly the opposite. These things don't really go well together. And I'm a harsh critic of the country that I was born in. But at the same time, I refuse to be treated based on the fact that I came from that place rather than as an individual. And I find it just outrageous that in Haverford, identity politics just
Right.
went so far that we forgot that ultimately we're actually supposed to be understood here as individuals without all these, baggage of where we
labeling.
come from,
Yeah.
our race, our gender, our nationality. We were supposed to be individuals here.
Right.
And yet you see that we're acting against what we are actually saying that we are.
Yeah.
Right.
And so that mismatch is the part is really annoying to me. I don't like this kind of games. Be honest with yourself and with others.
Right.
Yeah, I'm curious about that individual point, before October 7th versus after. I think we experienced it as freshmen. It felt like the whole campus was unified
Was
on
that freshman year?
political
Or
topics.
was that
Political freshman year
No, I'm
was
saying it was
before.
October 7th. What
That
year was
was-
October? 2023?
Yep.
Yeah, so we were sophomores.
Sophomores, yeah.
It's
So
crazy.
first 2 years, I felt like it was pretty unified politics on campus.
Well, so that's the thing. You didn't know
Did you
that
did
it
you feel
wasn't.
that? Yeah.
I had a student about 5 years ago, around the time of the strike. I asked my students to write blog posts for my classes because I think this is useful skill to have. A great size writing sample. He wanted to write about why do people vote for Trump in rural Pennsylvania. But I was worried about writing anything like that because people will ostracise him. I said, this is ridiculous. It's not like you're saying,
right.
Yes, yeah.
vote Trump. He's just trying to explain something that he has a better sense because he did come from rural Pennsylvania. And he ended up writing it, but that gives you the sense of, so when you feel like there was, that Harvard was politically unified, no, it's just that all voices of dissent are completely silenced at Haverford. And for a place that prides itself on open debate, this place is extremely oppressive. Oppressive, repressive, and the fact that we keep lying to ourselves, that's driving me crazy. Open your eyes,
Yeah, I think we're under some transition. I feel like again it's been cool in academia, and I've been taking a lot of classes that are ethnographically focused, and it's been interesting I think to see from students' perspectives. Dating back to the 20th century, and this focus on individualism and leaving centrism and kind of the stereotypes that fall along in all categories that go to individualism. I think now we're in some strange period between individualism but then also being cognizant of identity, which I think has brought back labeling in a lot of senses, and I don't know how that's going to look or how that's going to continue to progress with students. I mean, the goal is for Discourse to eventually come back and talking to people. But I think that's just something interesting. And you mentioned, it's funny you mentioning like being far left in Israel standards. And I was talking about this with Krish, and I was debating asking this question, but I was kind of figuring out the best way to word this. Like, I feel like because of October 7 and this post world we're now living in with identifying and labeling everything, like, I think from a student's perspective, and I think this is a part of the simplistic narrative piece, is that we're labeling like the Israeli conflict to be like, you know, people who are opposing to Palestine are like conservative in some regard. Like you said, you're like, I'm the complete opposite here. And then people's knowledge of Palestine is like, again, I feel like there's the labeling aspect of it is interesting.
So it happened way before
October
2023 that you had people again have such strong feelings about that conflict and know very little. I'm also against the whole being pro-Palestinian or being pro-Israeli.
Yeah.
I'm, like, to leave my scholarship aside, I'm pro-peace.
Yeah.
I feel that I'm pro both Israel and pro-Palestine. I don't think that it needs to be either or. And it's frustrating to me because my positions did not change on October 7. In fact, I wrote 2 articles extremely critical of the relationship between the Israeli government and the Messianic right in the West Bank. Yeah? But again, that's so your identity is important, and I sometimes actually lean on students' identities to get us a better sense of the diversity that we have. So I try to use that in a very positive way. I did a seminar last semester on terrorism in the United States in the 1960s and 70s. And there was a lot of discussion. Suddenly, it was terrorism not through religion, as I usually have when I study the jihadis, but a lot of element of race and gender that started playing a role. Of course, it was mostly left-wing terrorism of that time.
I'd love to read this, by the way. If you could send this to me, I'd love to read it.
And as you read through, and I make students read memoirs, and as people read those memoirs and also leaned on their own identities, you get a sense of how different Texas is from the Northeast. We have such misconceptions. So I think that often leaning on our identity could be useful to give us a sense of, we had a debate about what is the American dream. We had one student in the class who was first generation college student that I thought that student represented the American dream, but somebody else suggested, no, Elon Musk is the American dream. And we had a really interesting debate about that, and then linking your views about what needs to be the American dream and your disappointment about the American dream that doesn't always actually happen. What you were promised doesn't always happen, and try to link that to terrorism. But all these stories that people had, their personal experiences, allowed us to avoid those really, such general reductionist views. So I think identity is important in shaping your experience, but ultimately you need to be treated as an individual. In fact, one of the things that I try to shock my students in the intro is that I tell them, that international law is completely socially constructed. And that, in fact, it is biased, it is framed in a way that is really Western. That, in fact, it's focused on human rights through identifying the individual as the core unit in the world is a completely Western idea. Because if you go to the East, you have a lot more collectivist societies.
Yeah.
And in those collectivist societies, let's say the family cell could be the most important part, not the individual. And therefore, for the collective, you can sacrifice rights of individuals. Right? So the fact that we have human rights as a framework for international law didn't have to be like that. And it's socially constructed and actually imposed, because most of the people in the world, in their view, the basic unit is not the individual. Right? Mm-hmm. And so I think that people here need to do less activism and a little bit more studying before they get to the activist part, because I think there is just, we are not doing right the studying part. And that's just disappointing, because we have some really good people here.
Right. Well, I think to wrap it up, and then I'm going to let Chris get to his cool thesis question. I think, again, the last piece would be great to hear any advice you have for young academics who are, I guess, going to be maybe studying these fields or getting into political science like Chris, and kind of want to focus on intellectual honesty, but they don't want to risk misinterpretation. What advice would you have?
I mean, I'm really glad to say that the political science department at Haverford is an excellent department where we are actually focused on trying to construct arguments rather than scoring points or shaping people to be good people. What focus on actually doing this intellectual enterprise. I would recommend to people to take classes in political science, but I would say that regardless of that, to seek the complexity. That if you hear a theory that is too easy to be true and too general, don't buy it. If you find something in it appealing, read more, but avoid the simplistic stuff. And I think also try to be cautious about how identity politics is shaping your views, sometimes in a way that is not very productive. But what I would hope mostly is that we will be able to foster here a new environment that will be pushing people to become more intellectually driven or more focused on actually thinking critically. Because right now we just don't have that kind of tradition or orientation here. Way too much is just performative,
right?
Rather than real. And I say, be real, be real, be real, and be yourself.
Nice, awesome. And now, just to close off, a lot of our viewers are working on their senior theses. We are. So just curious, from your years at Haverford, one, what's the number one piece of advice you'd give to thesis writers, and two, what's the best thesis you've advised?
Whew.
Hardest question of the day.
I mean, because I think about theses that students wrote under my supervision, and there were so many different kinds. Because for me, many times, if you will offer to write a thesis about something that is not in my field, I would love that. I mean, not in my specific area of expertise, but in general in international relations, because I can learn more new things. So I had some remarkable theses like, trying to understand patterns of cooperation in Antarctica. A thesis that was focused actually on the environmental studies aspects of interstate cooperation. But then I had a remarkable thesis about how mid-level states behave, right? A whole category of countries such as Canada, Australia. I mean, I had a long list. I actually have all my thesis, all my advisees have to submit a hard copy because I keep all the hard copies in my office.
That's awesome.
And I have a list of all the thesis subjects that students wrote with me. Because really, some of them are doing such brilliant work. Last year, I had a student, Sasha, who wrote an award-winning thesis about misogynistic terrorism across cultures, comparing incels in North America to the Idanam in South Korea, and I don't remember the name of the group, social movement, but men that throw acid in India and Pakistan, and actually a branch of them in London. And so you look at misogynistic terrorism across cultures, and that's just such an awesome work to do. So these students make me so proud to see the thesis that my students provide. Yeah, 2 years ago, another student wrote brilliant thesis about purges in the diplomatic services, and he wrote about China and Russia. And he wrote me just a couple of months ago. He should have thought about the possibility of doing that in the U.S. as well, because we're seeing that. Advice about thesis: I think that people should start thinking about what they want to do early, already in your junior year. And people that know who they want to write with and have a better sense of what they would like to do, I would recommend that you start building your expertise way earlier. So for example, if you're interested in armed non-state actors, you don't need to know yet what exactly you're going to write about in your thesis, what aspect exactly of
start reading,
but
studying,
start doing papers about armed non-state actors for your different classes.
Yeah, you'll have
so that you get a better sense, and you also gain expertise, because it takes time to gain expertise. It's not just the time of reading; it's also for you to absorb all that information. I would also recommend that they start working as soon as they arrive on campus. Yeah. I try to get to the position that my students, the moment that they step their foot on campus in their senior year, know what they need to start be doing for their thesis.
Right.
Yeah. And so I start speaking with students already during the summer before their senior year to make sure that they have a specific research question by the time that they arrive here. So we brainstorm over the summer to do that.
All right, I did the right thing with Benston then, I guess.
Stack
That
of
was
books.
good. I was talking to him a lot this summer.
And I would say that last thing is not to pay attention to the number of pages, because students are wasting way too much energy on the wrong things.
Yeah.
So students ask me how many pages for either paper or thesis, and I always say, I don't care. Because from my perspective, I care to see that you have the right structure. If you have the right structure for the paper, the pages will write themselves.
Yeah.
Right? And I don't care if you write 26 pages or 32 pages. I mean, if we speak about papers that are supposed to be sort of up to 30 pages long, that's the wrong way to think about it. But students freak out if you don't give them sort of a range of numbers.
Yeah.
And so you give them the range of numbers, and then they are sure.
Like, oh my god!
And it doesn't matter how many times. This is not about the number of pages. This is not what's important here. It's one of those things that say, and you know that students will tell you in a year from now when they're done that you were right, and they should have listened to you, but they won't.
Wow.
Awesome. Good way to end it.
Yeah, that's a great way to end it. We really appreciate you for your time, and we're looking
My
forward
pleasure.
to
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, for sure. All right, tune in for more coverage, guys. Peace.